Good morning. Is it Easter? No. It is Easter. Orthodox calendar. It's Easter. In Ukraine, it's Easter this morning, actually. What is it you guys say? He is risen.
He is risen.
He is risen indeed. Yeah. I wasn't so sure for a while. My little technology piece here isn't working. We're going to wait on my tech. But I wasn't actually sure about the risen part. If you remember, after Jesus died, they put him in the tomb. Mary went to the tomb the next morning. He wasn't there. She came back to tell us, and so we ran to the tomb, and there was nobody there, at least as far as we could tell. We were looking for Jesus. His grave clothes were there. So we went back. Later that day, Mary went. She came running back, and she said she'd seen the Lord. Okay. She'd seen the Lord. But you know how women are. Get excited. Don't really know for sure. I didn't see him. She said she'd seen him. It's hard to know these things. What do you do when somebody says they've seen somebody who you watched die? It's tough to know what to do. We went back the next day, and you see here it says on the evening of the first day of the week, we were together. Our doors were locked. We were hiding out because we didn't want to get caught by the Jewish authorities. We thought we might be arrested. We might end up being crucified too. And all of a sudden there's Jesus right there with us. Which then you start to wonder, okay, well, you know how women are. And then I start to think, you know how crazy people are. Seeing dead people inside of a locked room. But when we're there, Jesus says what he had said many times, says, "Peace be with you." And then he showed me his hands with holes in them, hole in his side. Hard to believe. It's very hard to believe, and yet there we are with him. And then he was gone. What do you do? How do you reconcile what you know can't be true with what you just experienced, and so it must be true? Several times after that, we see Jesus, and he does all kinds of other miracles. So we know it's him. Only Jesus could do the things that he was doing. But still, we watched him die. We were out on a lake. We had decided that instead of waiting around, we needed to do something. And Peter, you know how Peter is, he made the decision he's going to go fishing. So several of us decided we'll go fishing with him. We go out in the boat, we fish at night. It's too hot, fish during the day. Midnight comes around. We haven't caught anything, which happens. We used to be fishermen. We took 3 years off. Middle of the night, confused about Jesus, not really sure even what to say, and then somebody starts talking about him. We brought up in our memory different things, and remembered the saying that came across, and my remote's again not working, but if you'll skip me forward. There we go. You remember this? Here's the bridegroom come out to meet him? You remember that he said that? That was in the parable of the virgins. So we're sitting in the boat. It's almost midnight. And that parable came to our minds because the point of that parable was that we should always be ready. And we haven't seen Jesus in a little while. He's kind of been popping in and out. And, you're never really sure. Are we going to see him again? Are we going to not see him again? And so we started talking about it. And the bridegroom is going to come out and meet him. And he came with this warning, keep watch because you don't know the day or the hour. And so in the boat, we're sitting there going, well, how do you keep watch? What do you do to keep watch for somebody you have no idea when they're going to come? How do you respond in a right way when who you believe is the Messiah tells you to be prepared for him to come back, and he's already risen as best as we know, and then he's gone again and back and gone, and it's confusing. Made us think further back. We started to kind of go through what all had taken place, and we were remembering way back when we first met Jesus, and we wanted to know who he was, and so we went to him, a couple of us, and we said, hey, where are you at? We want to come by and see you. And Jesus didn't tell us. He said, if you want to know, you should come and see. Come along and see where I'm at. And so we did. We went with him. Once we had spent just a little bit of time with him, we knew. So I went and I told my brother Peter, I said, look, we're pretty sure that we have found the Messiah. We're pretty sure that this person that we've been waiting for our whole lives and our grandparents' whole lives and their great-grandparents' whole lives, everybody for 400 years we've been waiting for this Messiah. And I know it seems absurd, really, but we were sure we'd found the Messiah. So we started to follow him. Some of us he told to, and other of us just kind of snuck along. Ended up being 12 of us following him around and trying to kind of get in on the Messiah action. We still didn't really know what that meant. Who is this Messiah guy? But as we walked around with him, he went around through different towns and different places, and he did all sorts of things. He would teach in the synagogues. He'd talk about the kingdom. He'd heal people. Everybody that was sick. Everybody. Lepers. Invalids. The blind. Demon-possessed. Didn't matter. Jesus was able to take care of every one of them. Who wouldn't want to hang around that? Who would not want to be a part of what Jesus had going on? Just watching one person healed of leprosy. The worst thing you could ever hear, you have leprosy. Incurable, except by Jesus. And then the people that we met, he'd run into these women. The Samaritan woman, 5 different husbands. She was a mess. She was a Samaritan. But Jesus didn't care that she was a Samaritan, didn't care that she'd had 5 husbands, didn't even care that she was with a different guy than those other 5 husbands. He didn't care about any of that. He's talked to her like she mattered. Changed her. Changed her life, changed her town. She went back to her town and talked about Jesus, and next thing we know, all these people are coming down out of the town. They're just wanting to meet this guy and Jesus that we've got to hang out with. There's this other lady, been bleeding for years and years and years. Blood's not good. Makes you unclean. Not supposed to even be around people who are bleeding. Jesus didn't care. That lady stood there and talked and talked and talked and talked and talked. And we had places to be and talked. And I was sure at some point that Jesus was going to say, ma'am, I got to go. I'm an important man. And talked. And he listened to her whole story. And then he healed her. I'm still a little stumped why he didn't just heal her at the beginning. Save a lot of time. But he heard her whole story. And then he healed her. Lady caught in adultery. We thought there was going to be a good stoning that day. One stone dropped on the ground. Then another, and then another. Then we were pretty sure at least that Jesus would set her straight. But do you know what he said? He just told her, stop it. Stop this life. Follow me. Turned water into wine. That was his best day, I think. We're going to a wedding. They run out of wine. How embarrassing. Creates wine in these gigantic tubs. Who doesn't remember a wedding with tubs of wine? Didn't think that was going to be Jesus' thing. That's what he did. Thousands of people come out to see him on the hillside, and they all forgot their lunch. Seemed like a good opportunity for a lesson on planning. He just fed them. Twice. You could have done the lesson on planning the second time. Fed them. Talked to them about the kingdom. We started to learn a little bit more about who he was and a little bit better understanding that he wasn't who we thought he was going to be. And at some point we started to want to learn more from what he had to teach us, not the other people. And we asked him, how do you pray? You'd think as Jewish people we would know that. But he prayed different. We would listen to him pray and it sounded like a conversation instead of a ritual. So we asked him, how do you pray? We didn't know what else to do in the boat that night because we weren't catching any fish. So we decided to give it a try. Our Father who art in heaven. What we learned is we still weren't very good at praying. But he had taught us how to go about following God. And how to have life not be a ritual. How to have faith not be a thing you do when you're around other people doing religion. He taught us not to worry. Well, that's not true. He told us not to worry. What I realized when he told us this idea of not to worry, that God was going to take care of us, was that I worried more than I thought I did. I was sitting in the boat that night worried, am I ever going to see him again? Are we going to do this right, whatever this is? I don't even know what it was. And we were beginning as we're sitting in the boat, not catching any fish, just wishing that we had had more time to ask him more things because we didn't know what to do, which was evidenced by us fishing. We're sitting in the boat, praying. And then one of us remembered, he said this, he told us to love our enemies. Pray for those who persecute us. So we're sitting in the boat trying to pray and not being very good at it. And then I don't even remember which one of us it was. He said, we're supposed to pray for those who persecute us. So we took some time and we prayed for the Jewish authorities that we've been hiding from. We've been afraid of. We realized just sitting there in the boat, we'd not been doing what he said because we were worried. We were hiding. And we still had enemies sitting there in that boat. We remembered he said this, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and nobody comes to the Father except through him. Well, that's what we wanted. We wanted to come to the Father. We wanted to know God. That's why we got involved with him in the first place, is he knew God. We really connected to Jesus because he was pretty impressive, but also because he knew God. He had a way to get us to God. And then one of us sitting in the boat said, I remember he said this, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. It can't come to the Father except through him. But then he said this, if you know me, you know my Father. And that light went on just a little bit. Jesus, if we never saw him again, had already shown us the Father just by looking at him. Just by how he interacted with those women, how he interacted with the centurion, how he interacted with the sinners. We'd already seen the Father. Then he told us this, if we wanted to stay connected, I am the vine and you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you'll bear much fruit. And we're sitting in the boat, not catching any fish. And somebody brings this verse up, this thing that he had said, and they say, if we remain connected to him, then we will bear fruit. But we're sitting in the boat with no fish. I didn't know if it was a metaphor or not, but you know, when you're in a boat with nothing else to do, you think of these things. Maybe we don't have any fish because we're not connected to the vine. Maybe we aren't ever going to see Jesus again. How are we going to do it right? How do you do faith right? Then we remembered his warning. He said this at that time, meaning later in our lifetimes, many are going to turn away from their faith. They're going to lose their faith. They're going to betray and hate each other. False prophets are going to arise. People are going to become deceived. Someone in the boat said, well, how do we not get deceived? If false prophets are going to come and lots of people are going to follow them and love's going to grow cold and all this bad stuff's going to happen. Jesus gave us this warning for a reason. What's the reason? Because we sat there in that boat. And we realized that is connected to the same thing, that if we stay connected to God, we won't fall victim to these false prophets. We may never catch any fish, but we won't fall victim to the false prophets if we stay connected to the vine. And he had said, I'm the vine. So we just had to stay connected to Jesus. We more and more were hoping that we would get to see Jesus again. Well, we did. The sun started to come up and we didn't have any fish. We were starting to get irritated with each other and time to go in. This guy standing on the shore. Hey, did you catch any fish? You never like to be asked that unless you've caught fish. I don't remember who said no, but they didn't say it very nicely. And you'd think we would caught on, but he said, hey, why don't you fish a little differently? Just, throw your nets over there on the other side of the boat. Most of the time we would have just said no, but for some reason we did. And the next thing we know, our nets are full of fish. And then the light goes on. This happened once before. When you've been fishing all night, you're not fast on your feet. So when he said throw the nets in on the other side, it didn't connect to us. We've done this before. But we had, and we did, and we caught a bunch of fish. And the next thing I know, Peter's putting his clothes on so he can jump in the water and swim in. And the rest of us are wondering, why'd you put your clothes on? Why did you just swim in? We'll bring you your clothes. But Peter kind of implies, in he goes. Jesus talked to him. We got to hear it. Jesus and Peter. Peter hadn't said much that night. He was not in a very good mood. He'd not done well. He'd been warned he was going to deny Jesus, and he did. He was sure he wouldn't. And yet all of us were sure. Every one of us said we would die with him. None of us did. Peter felt the worst. Jesus 3 times asks Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter got a little bent out of shape, said, you've asked me 3 times. You know everything. You know that I love you. So Jesus said, feed my sheep. This was the first direct statement to us after we realized Jesus really was risen from the dead. Resurrected. First time in history. You could say Lazarus, but Lazarus was raised by Jesus. Jesus raised Jesus. He was self-raised. And he makes this statement, feed my sheep. We all knew what he meant. Most of the time when he said parables, we had to go, well, what did that mean? We knew what he meant. We sort of thought that was it. Feed my sheep. But it turns out it wasn't. There was one last thing. You might wonder why in the books that we later wrote, why some things show up in one and some show up in another. The stories of the life of Jesus Christ is deep and complex. Trying to put it all down in a way that you as a reader can grasp the unfathomable depth of Jesus Christ. Shows up through 4 books. He said this just before he left for the last time. Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Honestly, I had no idea what that meant at the time. Other than everything belonged to Jesus. It would take us years to understand what had taken place, but everything belonged to Jesus. So he said this, therefore, since it's all mine, here's what I want you to do. Go and make disciples of all nations. I don't know how to do that, but I know that's the command. Feed my sheep. Go and make disciples of all nations. And he finished with this. I'll be with you always, even to the end of your days. My task at my time and your task in yours is to figure out, how do I feed his sheep? And how do I take the gospel to all nations? Never stop working on those 2 things. And Easter will be Easter every day of the year. Feed my sheep. Go and make disciples of all nations. Amen.